Hello, everyone. This is the art teacher speaking. My name is Miss Rebosio. Let's get started. So, this PowerPoint is about the elements of art. There are 7 elements. Let's go through and read them. Line, shape, color, value, space, form, and texture. We'll get into what each one of these mean in just a second. A line is a mark on a surface between 2 points. There are many different kinds of lines. For example, there's zigzag lines, dashed lines, curly lines, wavy lines, and straight lines, and it goes on. It is endless. A line is also a mark with a greater length than width. So by length, I mean how long it is. By width, I mean how fat or skinny it is. Typically, a line is much thinner than how wide it is. The next element is shape. A shape is a closed line. So, for example, if you drew a circle and then you decided to fill it in, then that circle becomes a shape. Shapes are normally flat. They are a 2D object with a height and width. By height and width, I mean how high it is, height, and width by how wide. There are 2 types of shapes, organic and geometric. Geometric shapes are normally clean and precise. They also have names. So geometric shapes are like rectangles, triangles, circles, square, the list goes on. This is a photo of me in front of a Frank Stella painting at the LACMA in Los Angeles. Frank Stella is a postmodern artist that normally makes all paintings that deal with geometric shapes. As you can see, there are half circles within it, triangles, stuff like that. The second type of shape is an organic shape. Normally, organic shapes are loose and free, and they don't really have a name. See, like, for example, there is this jellyfish-looking shape in the middle of the screen. There's this little peanut-looking shape. They don't really have names exactly. Organic shapes are just shapes that you draw and kind of they have curves in them, not a lot of harsh straight lines. And they are hard to replicate. Some examples of organic shapes are a leaf shape, a blob, a teardrop. Sometimes they're shapes that are found in nature. The next element is color. Color is reflected light that bounces off of objects. This is a little bit of a difficult concept, but I have an example of what I mean by reflective light. If you look at the bottom left picture, there is a little sun. And that sun is shooting out rainbows, so ultraviolet light. And it's hitting an object, which is an apple. What bounces off of the apple is called reflective light, and that reflective light hits our eyes. The reflective light that an apple shoots off, this apple at least, is red. So out of all those rainbow colors, it decides to bounce off red, and that's what we see. Color can also be made, all colors can be made from the 3 primary colors. And you guys should be familiar with the primary colors. If you don't remember, there is red, yellow, and blue. So red, yellow, and blue can be found on the color wheel. and it's in a triangle shape. So here's red, move down, yellow, blue. It goes triangle. The next element is value. Value is the lightness or darkness of a color. And when we use value, it's normally to shade things. So down below, I have an example of a value scale. And you can see it starts out with white, gets light, it gets a little bit darker in each panel as it goes along. Then it gets to the black. So value is the lightness or darkness of a color. So there's the whitest white and the blackest black. Normally, a good composition has a wide range of values. So think back of that value scale we just saw and look at this painting. This painting is by Pablo Picasso and it's named Guernica. And you can see that this artist has a wide range of values between white and black. And their composition is very full and it just works. There's a lot of contrast between it since it does use those very bright whites and dark blacks. The next element we're going to talk about is space. So space is the blank area around a shape or object. We're going to think about space in two different ways, but the first way is thinking about it as negative and positive. So if you look at the picture to the right, it shows you a negative and positive within a picture. And actually these two pictures that are on this PowerPoint slide have two different images you can see within them. Oh, wait a second. Look at them. See if you can see anything. Okay, so for this image with the negative and positive labeled on them, you can see that there's two faces that are looking at each other. But if you look at the black in between those two faces, there's also a little vase or a cup. I think it's pretty cool. The image to the left has two different legs. So the black has a man's leg, and then the white color has a woman's leg. They're pretty cool optical illusions. Another way that we can look at space is by thinking about it as an illusion of depth. So by this I mean on a 2D work of art, you're trying to show that it is almost 3D. I'll show an example of what this means. If you look at the image on the screen, there is a background, horizon line, middle ground, and foreground. And what these three grounds and the horizon line are trying to show is an illusion of depth. So they're trying to create like a spatial awareness between you and this image. So the background is the furthest part away from the horizon line. It's getting a little closer, so those mountains. The middle ground is the lake area, and the thing closest to us is the foreground. So you can create an illusion of depth using space in your artworks. Just make sure to include a background, middle ground, and foreground. The next element is form. Form is the element that gives the illusion that something is 3D. So it's a little bit similar to what we just explained for space, but there's some differences. There's an example on the screen of something that shows form, and they used value and shading to make these 2D forms that are drawn into 3D like forms. So they made like the shading wrap around those cones and cylinders and squares. Cubes. We can create the illusion of 3D forms in our 2D art by shading. 3D objects, such as those on this example photo, show a length, a width, and a depth. So remember, a length is how long an object is. The width is how wide. Scratch that. Just know, 3D objects can show a length, a width, and a depth. Texture, how a surface feels or appears to feel to the touch. So I have some artworks on the screen. They're a little funny. For example, there is this cup and saucer and it's covered with fur. Normally, these objects would be porcelain or hard to the touch, but this artist kind of made a funny juxtaposition and they put fur on it instead. It's unusual. The image on the right is a sculpture made out of pencils. And the top of it looks very pointy. So when you look at this image, you're thinking, oh, if I touch that, then it's gonna kind of hurt. So they have a pointy texture. Texture can be two things. So there is real texture and there's implied texture. Let's look at real first. Real means that you can actually feel it on your fingers. So if I went in and touched that oil painting of that eye, I would be able to feel the bumps of that paint. Just a little fun fact, this is called impasto painting, when you paint really thick. The second type of texture is implied. This means that it looks real, but it's just drawn or painted on a flat surface. So the picture above is of these two animals, and that fur is all drawn in. It's not a photo. Okay, so next what you should do is go to the next assignment, which is called Show You Know the Elements. And you'll be looking at a worksheet and you need to spot the elements within this artwork. This is a painting by Vincent van Gogh. And you're going to be explaining or picking out each element that you see in this painting. And you'll be doing this by typing in that Google document. Don't forget to turn it in. Bye, guys.